US President Donald Trump has announced a 25% tariff on all car and light truck imports into the country. It's due to come into effect on April 2nd. Economists and world leaders are warning that it will be a tax on consumers and have a chilling effect on the global economy.
America's auto sector was supposed to thrive under new tariffs. The White House promised factories humming again, with Detroit's Big Three leading the charge. Yet the reality feels very different. Rising costs are squeezing margins, supply chains are uncertain, and investment decisions are slowing down. While U.S. production struggles to find stability, Canada looks increasingly attractive. With CUSMA protection still in place, vehicles built north of the border can reach American buyers without the same risks. It raises a compelling question. If the next billion-dollar assembly lines are not built in Michigan or Ohio, could they be rising in Ontario instead? Suppose GM, Ford, and Stellantis decided to expand in Canada. What impact would that have on the North American auto supply chain? Let's find out. Just recently, the fragility of America's investment climate was exposed at Hyundai's new electric vehicle battery plant in Georgia. Immigration agents detained nearly 500 specialized workers, halting construction on a $7 billion project. Costs mounted, deadlines slipped, and an effort meant to create thousands of jobs turned into a cautionary tale. For automakers, this was a wake-up call. Tariffs already push up prices for steel, aluminum, and imported parts. Now, immigration crackdowns are adding another layer of risk, making it harder to find and retain the skilled labor that factories need. Instead of an open door, executives see a moving target. Canada offers a different picture. Under CUSMA, Canadian-built vehicles keep their privileged access to the U.S. market. Ottawa's more open immigration approach also makes it easier to bring in skilled workers when shortages emerge. On top of that, Ontario has attracted billions in battery and EV supply chain projects, creating a ready ecosystem. The contrast is clear. Instability on one side of the border, predictability on the other. Now imagine that General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis each decide to expand in Canada instead of the United States. A modern assembly line employs 2,000 to 3,000 workers and produces around 200,000 vehicles per year at an average factory gate price of $30,000 per car. That is about $6 billion of output per plant each year. If all three shifted their next projects north, the United States would lose 6,000 to 9,000 direct factory jobs. Because every assembly job supports several more in suppliers, trucking, and local businesses, the wider loss could exceed 50,000 jobs nationwide. The missed production would be worth roughly $18 billion annually. For Canada, those numbers translate into gains. 6,000 to 9,000 new factory jobs would anchor communities in Ontario and beyond. When the multipliers are counted, the economy could add 50,000 to 60,000 jobs. Canadian auto output, worth about $14 billion only a few years ago, could surge by another $18 billion in a single year. What Washington's policies push away, Ottawa's stability could pull in. The lesson is straightforward. Tariffs that raise costs and immigration policies that shrink the workforce may not bring factories back. They may push factories across the border. Canada's appeal lies not in offering something flashy, but in offering certainty. For the U.S., the choice is whether to adjust course. Stable trade rules and practical workforce policies could restore confidence. For Canada, the opportunity is to build on its CUSMA advantages and ensure its labor and supply base can meet demand. Factories go where the path is clear. If America continues to close doors, then the next wave of North American auto investment may roll north, and the engines of Detroit's future could be heard humming in Ontario. Don't push a Canadian too far. I'm being pushed too far. At the Toronto International Film Festival this year, the spotlight was not only on cinema, it was also on Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney. In a tribute speech, he recalled how Canadian actor John Candy often played characters who were pushed too far, who eventually stood up for themselves. Carney then added his own twist. He reminded the audience that Canadians too will not sit quietly when their sovereignty is challenged. On the surface, it was a celebration of film, but underneath it carried a pointed message. At a cultural festival known for its global reach, Carney sent a signal to Washington. Canada, he implied, will not be intimidated by Donald Trump's pressure. Using the language of film and humor, Carney transformed an art stage into a platform for political resistance. The timing of this remark matters. Only days earlier, the U.S. raised tariffs on Canadian goods outside the USMCA framework from 25% to 35%. Announced August 1st under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, these reciprocal tariffs, as Trump called them, hit softwood, lumber, steel, and aluminum, directly threatening Canadian producers. Carney's warning that Canada had been pushed too far wasn't theater. It answered real trade aggression. He'd already launched an $80 million regional initiative to help small and mid-sized Atlantic businesses find new markets in Europe and Asia, funding storage upgrades and market expansion. The goal? Give firms tools to adapt, rather than wait for Washington. That same week in Ontario, Carney called the moment a rupture, not just a transition. The U.S., he said, had abandoned decades of free trade for economic nationalism, with tariff rates at their highest since the 1930s. Supply chains built over generations were suddenly disrupted. Investment stalled. Workers faced fresh uncertainty. Canada, he argued, cannot rely on one partner. Even the U.S. His government unveiled a major projects office to fast-track infrastructure and energy investments and reinforced a formal Buy Canadian strategy to keep domestic demand strong while pivoting toward Europe and Asia. This was more than symbolism. Carney's TIFF remarks became the cultural prelude to a national economic plan. Hope is not a strategy, he warned. Control what we can, starting with what we buy in Canada, so our businesses can adjust to new realities. In Washington, tariffs have become the centerpiece of economic policy. By early August, U.S. duties on more than 60 countries ranged from 10% to 50%, with Trump even threatening 100% on semiconductors. The White House framed them as a way to bring jobs home, but independent studies, including from Yale, warned of rising household costs. Ottawa's response has been different. Carney tied national pride to economic resilience, turning a festival speech into a declaration of strategy. Canada will defend its sovereignty by diversifying trade, investing in domestic capacity, and standing together. What began as a tribute to an actor became a call to write Canada's own story, steel hidden beneath humor, and a clear message that the country is ready to withstand a fractured global trade order. Canada has launched a $5 billion strategic response fund to protect industries hit hardest by U.S. tariffs, including steel, aluminum, copper, softwood lumber, and the auto supply chain. In the auto sector, facing a 25% U.S. tariff and a 35% year-over-year drop in electric vehicle sales, according to CTV, Ottawa has paused its federal EV mandate, which had required 20% of new light-duty vehicles to be electric by 2026. Giving automakers critical breathing room. For workers, a national reskilling package is set to help about 50,000 people transition into new roles, pairing training with job-matching support to offset hiring disruptions. Farmers, especially canola growers hurt by Chinese duties, will receive $370 million in incentives to convert crops into biofuels for the Canadian market. These steps form a shield, designed not to wait out U.S. policy shifts but to strengthen Canada's economic base for years of turbulence. Rather than delivering a dramatic counterpunch, the plan quietly reinforces the economy from the inside, tightening Buy Canadian procurement rules, investing in workers and cushioning key sectors. While Trump's tariffs are intended to force concessions, Canada's diversification toward Europe and Asia and its domestic investments may ultimately weaken Washington's leverage. U.S. consumers are already absorbing higher costs, and Canada's resilience could outlast both the tariffs and the political cycle driving them. At the same time, tensions are rising in the Arctic. Denmark has accused the United States, its NATO ally, of covert operations in Greenland aimed at stirring separatist sentiment, warning that such influence campaigns violate international law and betray Allied trust. Greenland's strategic importance is undeniable. It hosts military bases critical for monitoring Russia and contains vast deposits of critical minerals. Trump's earlier talk of buying the island underscored Washington's long-standing ambitions. Danish public broadcaster reports now link at least 3 Americans connected to Trump's circle to covert influence efforts that resemble the tactics Russia used in Ukraine to amplify local divisions before applying pressure. As Washington's actions strain transatlantic ties, Canada is charting a different course, strengthening green energy and trade cooperation with Denmark, and signaling that Arctic leadership is no longer Washington's domain alone. Denmark responded by summoning the top U.S. diplomat in Copenhagen and launching investigations, warning that the covert operations alleged in Greenland raise doubts about whether Washington is undermining trust inside NATO, an alliance meant to prevent such behavior. The Danish public broadcaster's investigation uncovered evidence that men with ties to Donald Trump sought to infiltrate Greenland. In February 2025, Canada joined the Global Offshore Wind Alliance, linking its Atlantic provinces to Denmark's world-leading offshore wind expertise. Projects such as the Toklu Wind and Hydrogen development in Newfoundland and Labrador, backed by Danish infrastructure partners, aim to produce green hydrogen for export to Europe. Denmark's concept of energy islands, artificial platforms that connect wind farms and hydrogen production, is already shaping Canadian planning. Beyond energy, Canada's aluminum industry is gaining a strategic edge. Produced largely with hydropower, Canadian aluminum ranks among the cleanest in the world. In 2024, Canada-Denmark bilateral trade reached about $2.7 billion US, but the real significance lies in the kind of trade being forged: green energy technology, hydrogen, and Arctic cooperation that could shape global influence for decades. 2 competing futures are emerging. Trump's approach relies on threats and alleged covert operations, while Canada and Denmark are building their position through cooperation, sustainable industries, and a steady transatlantic link. Canada is not merely reacting to U.S. pressure. By aligning with Denmark, it is creating strategic options that reduce dependence on the American market and extend its reach across the Atlantic. In the Arctic, power will belong not to those who shout the loudest, but to those who forge the most resilient alliances. And on that front, Canada and Denmark already stand strong, proving that influence can be earned through partnership rather than force.